Good morning and welcome to the first Agri Knowledge Circle of 2022. My name is Elro van den Burg and our topic today is the impact of the war on Ukraine on the agricultural markets. Obviously, the war has a huge impact on the agricultural markets worldwide. Not only is it difficult to sow the crops in Ukraine, such as corn, wheat, oats and sunflowers, it's currently also not possible to export via the Black Sea harbors. According to recent data of the UN, around 25 million tons of grain are stuck in Ukraine. In today's issue of our Knowledge Circle Agri, we look at how big the impact is for Poland. We will discuss with experts the current situation on mainly the grain and feed market in Poland and possible consequences for the livestock sector. What does this all mean for Poland? We will discuss these topics with several specialists from the industry, both from Poland and from Ukraine. Marcin Galiński, Managing Director, and Krzystof Dębek, Trade and Development Director, both of Trouw Nutrition Poland. Elena Neroba, Business Development Manager at Maxigrain, and she is in Ukraine. Grzegorz Kozieja, Director of the Food and Agri Sector Analysis Bureau at the International Food and Agri Hub at the BNP Paribas Bank Polska. Dariusz Goszczyński, Director General of the National Poultry Council of Poland. And with us is Carolien Spaans, who is sitting here next to me.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Elro. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carolien Spaans and I'm Agricultural Counsellor at the Embassy of the Netherlands in Poland, previously working in Ukraine. Today I'm joining Elro in the studio, but as always for the Agri Knowledge Circle, I was also on location in Poland for an interview. Last Friday I visited Trouw Nutrition Polska, a Dutch feed company that provides nutritional solutions to the livestock sector. I spoke with the general manager about the dynamics of prices of raw materials, the challenges for the company due to the war, and the effects of the uncertainty on the markets for the livestock farmers. We also spoke about a positive trend in the agri-food sector in Poland, so we will end on a positive note. You will see this interview during today's broadcast.
Thank you, Carolien. I want to mention to the audience that you can ask questions to our guests. Please send them to us in the chat and we will address them during the conversations and during the panel discussion. We will receive them here on the iPad. We now go to our first studio guest, Grzegorz Kozieja, Director of the Food and Agri Sector Analysis Bureau. Welcome here with us.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, thank you. You will present some of the highlights of the current food market situation in Poland.
Exactly. I'm Grzegorz Kozieja, Head of Food and Agri Sector Analysis Bureau at BNP Paribas. And what I would like to discuss with you today over the next few minutes are some highlights mostly related to the Polish food market. But before we would go to the exact effects of the war in Ukraine on Polish market, on food market, it's worth to add some context. So the changes and turbulences on the food market have not started 3 months ago. They've lasted for a longer time, and there are 6 big causes of what was changing on the market. So we had the COVID-19 pandemic. Following quickly after it, the increase in natural gas prices. We had situations in China with ASF, but frankly, whatever China does in this market has really big implications for the world. There is the whole transformation concerning improving sustainability. There are evolving consumer tastes and economics, the supply and demand, and the impact of war on Ukraine is visible the most in this last area. Where are we with the prices, with the global food prices at the moment? Well, they are measured by FAO Food Price Index, and it's been recorded since the year 1960. And what happened in March, so a month ago, we reached the highest price level in real terms in history of this index. So we are beyond the big crisis of the 1970s, we are beyond what was happening around the Yom Kippur War, and we may say we are now facing a situation that nobody active in the economic life today has seen in their professional lives. This is a split of this index into subcategories. The whole index is with the red line. And there are two categories that drive this index the most upwards. So first, you can see the vegetable oils, this light green line that goes very much up. So that was going up very quickly, very rapidly, and following it were the cereals, and here in these two categories the impact of war on Ukraine is particularly acute. How this translated into the price situation in Poland? First, let's take a look on grains and oilseeds. We can see that since the war started, the prices grew by approximately 30%. How to read this chart? I'm showing here how the prices were evolving for a year before the war and since the war. So you can see it. You can look at it as a summary of a situation over the last say 15 months. With meat, the prices were going 20 to 60% up since the war began. Especially the big move we had with the pigs livestock. With the other categories, that was a bit faster. What was happening already before the war. With milk, we can also see growth, but milder. Especially growing were the skimmed milk powders and butter in blocks. So one may say the products that can be kept as more strategic, but the war on Ukraine is not the only reason for this growth. We are facing a situation of a limited supply for some time, and also with butter there is an impact of growing oils and fats prices generally in the world. So this also drives it a bit. With vegetables and fruit, the impact of war is relatively limited. So we have very low changes of the price levels since the end of February. Just to add some perspective to that, as we were saying at the very beginning, we've been in the inflationary environment in food for some time already, and what you can see here is the impact of war. So how it accelerated the price growing trends. This line going across the chart. This is the border between the growth before the war, for a year before the war and since the war. So whatever you have on the left hand side up, this actually tells you that these categories grew more since the war started than they grew for the whole year before the war. So the war. So we can see that the impact of war in some categories was really tremendous. Now, how are the feelings in the sector among the agriculture producers? The beginning of year was felt really bad. So what I am showing here is the agriculture overall situation indicator, which is calculated by the Warsaw School of Economics. And this is based on the research that was performed in January and February. So it's the war situation is not yet fully reflected in there. And we are facing the one of the biggest drops, if not the biggest drop in the history of this index. And one may treat it as a rather softer indicator of what people feel. And now when we look on the more hard indicator, the situation seems to be in this very bad context, we may say improving a bit for the agriculture producers. I'm showing here the index of so-called index of price scissors, so the difference between the inputs prices and the products prices for agriculture producers, and it's calculated by the National Institute for Agriculture and Food Economics. And on the left-hand side, you can see that the blue line, which is the purchase prices of agricultural products, it went above the inputs prices. So maybe the feelings in the sector will become a bit better. And on the right-hand side, you can also see that this yellow or orange line that shows the year 2022, it's also showing an upward trend in this price scissors index. And now let's move a bit to the consumer, because this is where the actual economic decisions are made. So this slide looks a bit messy, but overall it shows the changes in food prices in Poland, the Netherlands, Czech Republic and some other bigger European countries. And this is since the year 1997. As you can see, the food prices growth that we are facing now, they are the largest in this century. But they are close to the levels that people experienced already. The growths in Central or Eastern Europe are higher than in Western Europe. And what is also important to remember when you think about the consumers is that they entered the war, but also the pandemic, after the period of a big stability in food prices. So the feeling they may be facing now is can be really significant for them, because the situation is changing a lot, and there are some consumers that basically did not experience a situation of visible food prices changes at the shelf in the shop. What was growing the most in Poland year on year in April, the poultry meat is if one may say so, a winner in this classification. So it went up by almost 50%, and there is a big group of products that were growing by a fourth or by more than 30%. And what's also important to say here, and why the situation now is different than in previous years when we had these food prices spikes in history, is that the inflation is across the board. So the consumer faces increase of costs basically everywhere, especially in energy. This dark line that goes up very steep, this is exactly the energy, and you can see that in the last decades, basically, we did not have a situation when the price growths were coupled so much together. As a last thing here, we are also facing a situation when the interest rates in Central Europe and in Poland as well are going up. So in Poland, the most of mortgages are with variable rates. So people very often, those who were keen to try new food, to go to restaurants and so on, they also have mortgages. So now they are facing the increase of financial costs, and the interest rates in Poland, they are still lower than in Hungary and Czech Republic. So this is also a driver that we must count with in the future as something decreasing the consumption spendings capacity of consumers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grzegorz. We for this interesting insight had a presentation that you just gave us. Let's go a little bit deeper on a few topics that you discussed. First question that comes to mind is the causes for the higher prices are you presented it in the beginning. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is in higher prices for oil and grain coming from Ukraine. Would it be also so simple that you would say, well, if those prices are lowering, then we would see that right away a big impact on the total prices on the market for food?
Well, first of all, they cannot go down immediately. Yeah, we are facing some difficulties even with the physical infrastructure and with lack of people that cannot make these prices go down immediately. And as I was trying to start, the war on Ukraine is not the only reason that the prices were going up. So unfortunately for us, we are in the series of events, of turbulences that disrupt the supply chains, change the supply routes, and that's just the turmoil. And in such a situation, that the prices are changing, uncertainty is growing, and we are facing the growing prices on the shelves.
And would you be able to say something about how dependent Poland is on the inputs from Ukraine, especially grains and vegetables?
Sure. It's in this context. It's important to remember about not only Ukraine but the whole East, because the impact was actually on Ukraine, but also our relation with Russia and Belarus. So, but starting from Ukraine, it's rather limited. So we as Poland were not very much depending in either export or import in actually any category apart from the vegetable oils and the oil plant seeds. And here around 30% of vegetable oils that we are importing to Poland were coming from mostly from Ukraine, but also to some extent from Russia. So here is a particularly difficult situation. We were more or less balanced when it comes to the value of flows with Ukraine, even yet before pandemic. So we are selling for as much as we were buying from Ukraine. Now the situation would be probably a bit different because the price relations changed. So we would be paying probably more than receiving from Ukraine for the same categories. So the impact rather limited apart from vegetable oils.
And something else that Poland, but the whole of the EU and the world is relying on is also the fertilizers, which are coming also from Belarus, from Russia, but also nitrogen is produced here, which is very expensive due to the gas. Would you know something about the impact on the fertilizer market and the impact for the farmers?
Farmers are quite afraid of what is happening in a lot of productions, especially this staple or basic productions, the fertilizers are the biggest part of costs. In wheat, in rapeseed especially, the current situation is changing a lot when it comes to economics. Also, the war is not the time when the difficult situation began. So this growing natural gas prices that started back in 2021 were already causing some disruptions, and we had the lowest stock levels of fertilizers in Europe. Even some plants were shut down for some time to produce, and this season is not better than 2021. So we still have very low stocks of fertilizers and growing prices. However, the fertilizers producers, they have a big incentive to produce more, because the economics, as we could see after the Q1 results, they are pretty good for them. So I think they will be striving to supply as much as possible. And this year it's not so bad, as we can see, especially when it comes to the larger agricultural producers. They still had some stocks from the previous years. They were not waiting till the last moment to buy fertilizers, and also the first season, when you don't apply so much, it does not make immediate rapid changes when it comes to yields. So this season will be probably relatively safe. The troubles may come next year when if the current difficult situation persists.
Back to the previous question. That's maybe a total sidestep, but we were talking about the dependence of the food prices on oil coming from Ukraine. But looking in the shops, the prices for instance, in the Netherlands, I hear that from friends, prices are going up. They're trying to buy that in bulk. But here in Poland, the prices stay the same. What is the reason behind that?
The prices stay the same.
Yeah,
No.
more or less the same. Over the last few months. If you go to the shop, I saw that the prices of cooking oil are the same. Or am I mistaken? Am I going to the wrong shop maybe?
We had a different discussion.
Probably.
We had a different discussion with my wife a week ago, because we are wondering what to do with this cooking oil exactly, because we are recalling that it's the brand we are buying went up by 50%. No, unfortunately the prices are not staying so much the same, and what is worse, probably they are not peaking yet.
Yeah.
So
okay.
The transmission from producer to consumer usually lasted somewhere between 6 and 12 months, and we can see that the commodities prices they were growing. So I think there may be a scenario in which if we see a repeated growth in 2022-23 as we are seeing in 2022, this is not something should surprise us as consumers.
Okay, well maybe I'm just shopping in a different shop than you are. At the end of the program,
you
we'll
need
give
to
you
share an address afterwards.
I will share it. Yes, I will share it. Yes. That might help. We were talking about the peaking of the price. You say we're not at the peak yet. Is there anything? Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, well, you can see from what the major consumer goods producers are saying in their reports that their transmission is not over yet. So they are still testing the prices with the retail chains. They are in the open market, so yeah. Poland is not the only market for them, and the demand is from actually everywhere. I cannot see any premises why the demand would be lowering now for a predictable time. So unfortunately, as consumers, we need to be ready for further growth.
Okay, we are already in unprecedented times, but this is further going to continue.
In my opinion, yes, we still will be facing the growing consumer prices. Unfortunately, there is something you may call a crisis, and we are not accustomed to such situations. Unbroken record of economic growth in Poland for 30 years, and this is basically something new, and that's our generation must face.
Yeah, understand. Okay, thank you very much, Grzegorz, for giving us the overview of this topic. Last Friday, Carolien spoke to General Manager of Trouw Nutrition, Mr. Marcin Galiński. Trouw Nutrition, a feed company from the Netherlands, also present in Poland and Ukraine. They first spoke about the presence of Trouw on the Polish market, the current status of the production facility in Ukraine, and the dynamics in prices on the market.
Thank you very much, Martin, for having us here today.
It's a pleasure to host you in our factory, in our company, and I hope that we will manage.
I'm sure we will. But could you first maybe tell something about Trouw Nutrition? It exists already for 90 years in the Netherlands, 30 years in Poland.
Yes, this year is 30th anniversary in Poland. We started in Grodzisk Mazowiecki, few hundred meters from this place, and then we moved to the current location where we built a production facility for premixes, for concentrates, calf milk replacers, and also liquid premixes. And all activity now is located in Grodzisk Mazowiecki.
And from here you're serving all the sectors, all the livestock sectors, so you're in poultry, cattle and the pig sector.
Yes. In Poland we have a pleasure to serve all our customers equally. I think that we are very balanced situation because we are present in every sector like you mentioned, and we have a partnership with compound feed industry, with big farms, direct relation, but also we work with distributors to serve medium and small farms together with them.
From what I understood, you also have a production location in Ukraine. Would you be able to tell a little bit maybe about what the situation is there at the moment?
Yes, it's true. We have a production location and commercial activity in Ukraine. Since the beginning of the war, there was a lot of turbulences, but within few days, when the whole people are secured and the situation just a bit, if I can say, normalized, whatever it means, the company in Ukraine started to put a lot of effort to restart the production, and at the beginning they started to produce few hours per day. Nowadays, in the last several weeks, our colleagues reach 3 shifts per day. It's a great achievement in my opinion. They have to manage a lot of difficulties with supply of raw materials, with people also who are mobilized and now protect the country, but also to organize financials for the customers and regular supplies of the goods to them.
Okay. But now going back to Poland, we can see the prices went up really high at the beginning of all kinds of raw materials. What is the situation with the prices at the moment?
Yeah, that's true. The prices raised up significantly, especially the second wave started when the war started, and that was the shock for us, where we expected some normalization or even a downward trend. However, last 2 months the prices went up and they stabilized at high level. in the last weeks, we observed just a bit decline of the cereals, corn or wheat. However, this trend, I would not call it an already stable trend. But yes, we see some positive trends, positive from feed market, and we also see some opportunity to supply from Ukraine. However, I think that regular deliveries is not yet organized well.
Thank you. In a moment we will talk to you further about this dynamics on the market.
Welcome.
Our next guest is Mr. Dariusz Goszczyński, Director General of the National Poultry Council of Poland, also the Krajowa Rada Drobiarstwa, Izba Gospodarcza.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome. This organization associates almost all the largest producers and exporters of poultry. For many years it has been promoting poultry on the internal and on third country markets. Mr. Dariusz, welcome here in the studio. When you hear that presentation, what's your first impression when you hear that? Nothing new or some highlights that you see?
Well, situation is difficult when we look at the main factors which have an influence on production costs, grains and energy. We can observe that they are very high, and they only feed has a 70% influence on production costs. Majority of production buildings are heated by, they have a heating system based on gas, electricity, transport, and labor cost. All those factors, all those elements have a significant impact on production cost. Therefore, we can observe so high prices, which reflect those production costs.
Right. Because increase of price 47%, that's huge, eh?
It is. But as I said, this is not this 47% takes into account cost increasing in cost of production.
Yeah, sure.
But 47% is the growth of the cost for the consumer. You just said, for example, that the feed is growing with 70% in price. Is it still profitable to be in the poultry sector?
It is difficult. For over 2 years, it was difficult to achieve break-even. We had a coronavirus, we had an avian influenza, strong, many outbreaks in Poland. So all those elements had a significant impact on the production profitability. But still, on every production stage, starting from hatchery, breeding, slaughterhouses, they must take into account current situation, calculate costs of production, and final price must reflect all those elements. The problem is it's difficult to predict when will it stop, when and where.
And you mentioned a few of those players in the whole supply chain, for example, the slaughterhouses, etc. Could we see maybe what the impact is for all these different players, specifically in the chain? For example, starting with slaughterhouse.
On every stage, hatchery use gas, use electricity, labor, transport, breeders use feed, electricity, gas, labor, transport. Slaughterhouses use also a lot of gas and electricity. So on every stage, we can observe that those elements which increased recently very high are important. Therefore, on every production stage, when those players calculate price, must take into account that situation. And also they worry about the future, especially when we talk about turkey production, which is much longer than chicken production. Today we have a situation as we have, but what's going to be within next 5 months.
Oh, okay, but if you look at the price is influenced by energy prices and by feed prices. Feed prices, yeah, maybe in the cost price for slaughterhouses, but slaughterhouses, of course, they have an impact on the energy prices, but not by the feed prices. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct. But the price which they calculate with retailers must take into account price which they pay for the birds, for breeders. Yeah. And the breeders increase the prices due to that increasing of feed.
Okay, but if we look at this question from a different angle, if we say who is in the best position in this whole, and we talk about from farm to fork, yes, the whole supply chain. Who is still having some room to move? Who is in a good financial position? And which part of this chain is really in troubles?
It's difficult to say. On every production stage, producers must think about proper calculation, must think about the business. There is no additional financial resources to put in this production chain. So on hatchery level, they must calculate the cost, and this cost must be reflected in the price of chicks. Breeders also must calculate prices of feed, energy, and other costs, and they must reflect those costs in the price of birds, and the same slaughterhouses must calculate prices of this raw material, those birds, and also additional costs of cooling and other processes.
Actually, the whole chain feels the impact, is what you say,
yes?
Yes? But who from your members is complaining the hardest? Which part?
There are no complainings. We try to find ourselves in this situation. We are discussing about forecasts, about situations which could have an influence in the future on the production process. For example, of course, we have a lot of question marks regarding feed prices, energy prices, but still we have a very advanced discussion at the EU level about F2F strategy, which have a significant impact on reduction productivity and increasing prices. Today we are discussing about food security, how to feed society. And at the same time, we have a very serious, advanced discussion how to reduce productivity and increase production costs. So that's very difficult.
Okay. But the farm to fork is in opinion at least of the Netherlands, is also for the long term providing food security. For example, also by sustainable production, also by a reduction of antibiotics.
Okay, so we don't discuss about to give up this direction, but we should take into account current circumstances, and maybe it's reasonable to postpone some elements of this reform.
Because the concern mainly would be for the markets, maybe not even for the availability of products on the world market, but more for the affordability, especially in countries such as Northern Africa and Asia, which might also depend on the poultry from Poland.
There are many reports which justify that reform F2F strategy and reform will have an impact on reduction productivity and increasing cost. And today we talk how to feed African countries, how to feed other markets, and therefore we ask you Commission for reflection of this situation.
I think this topic will also come back in a panel discussion about the Green Deal and the farm to fork. Because from the Netherlands we have a different view on this issue, so it will be nice for the panel discussion with more people.
Yeah. I had another question, and that is, we talked about the impact of grain and oil on the Polish market from Ukraine. Could you say something more about your own sector, the poultry, and how the Ukraine and Poland are connected, and what is the impact on the market situation here in Poland?
When we talk about poultry sector, we're self-sufficient. We produce about 3 million tons annually, and over half of this is exported. So we don't import much from Ukraine when we talk about poultry sector. Ukraine export quite a lot to European Union market. It's over 100,000 tons.
1%. It's 1% of the EU market.
Okay, but still, 100,000 tons of fillet is quite significant amount.
Yeah.
So total Ukrainian export is around 400,000 tons.
Okay, so the impact, would you say, of the production of livestock is not really big on Poland?
Yeah.
Okay, and in general, the livestock, not only poultry, if you take it broader?
It's difficult to tell me how other sectors will be affected with this situation. On poultry in Poland, it is not serious thing, but still, as I said, Ukraine exported quite a lot to the European market, and we can observe, for example, in Netherlands, they imported, I think they're the major partner for Ukraine.
Yeah.
And we can observe some turbulences.
In the Netherlands, indeed, there's also a facility where part of the poultry meat is being cut out, but then also exported to the UK, for example.
Yeah.
I was also have a question about meat and meat replacements. In the Netherlands, we can see, for example, that meat replacers are at the moment just as expensive as meat because of the growth of the price of meat. Do you see such a trend in Poland as well? And do you find, how would I say, maybe competition from meat replacers as well?
Okay, when we talk about poultry can be replaced by pork, but pork is also increasing. When talking about prices, pork recently also increased, so poultry rather won't be exchanged by pork. When we talk about lab meat and vegetarian lab meat in Poland, still there are a lot of doubts about production technology of lab meat, and this lab meat is very expensive. So at the moment, this is not a big threat for poultry in Poland. Other trends like veggie consumer who decide to turn to veggie diet, I don't think that the price of product is the main driver for them.
It would be more about health, for example. We could see this trend, I think, increasing after COVID.
I strongly believe that poultry is an excellent source of protein with competitive price.
We wouldn't have expected any other answer from you. Yes, but thank you for bringing this here. Please stay with us in the studio, because we have a final discussion with all the participants. So we will have that later. And we will now continue with the interview of Carolien with the General Manager of Trouw Nutrition, Mr. Marcin Galiński. And they will talk about the effects of the uncertainty on farmers in Poland, specifically in the pig and poultry sector.
Martin, we were just talking about the dynamics on the market, about the prices, that you could see an increase in prices, but now it's sort of stabilizing. But it's actually quite uncertain, I would presume, for the farmers.
Yeah, the situation is very delicate, and uncertainty on the market regarding the availability of cereals, the price, but also the price of products like meat, milk, eggs, creates a lot of uncertainty in farmers. They take the decision based on the today's situation, but nobody can predict what will happen within the days, weeks. If we say about months, it is just a guess, best guess, what can happen.
And do you see farmers, especially in the livestock, already adjusting to this uncertainty?
Yes, we have noticed several actions. One of them is to reduce the number of animals in their stock. Second is postpone the new placement. Somebody, especially the swine, but also poultry, if they can delay or can wait with the new placements, this is the one of the situation, and it results in reduction of the animals in Poland. The whole swine industry is under the pressure for several years already, and some farmers are really in difficult situation to continue the business, and that's why they are facing the decisions to stop or continue, which for some of them, especially small farms, is very difficult, and that's why many of them decided to stop already.
Because in the swine sector, Poland is already dealing for quite some time also with African swine fever, so now on top comes this.
Yes, the African swine fever create a lot of issues with price, with continuation of production, also security measures applied at the farms, and some changes in the legislation put them new requirements which they have to face and finance, and all of this resulted in worsening the economic conditions of the swine farms. Today we hear that there's another drop of the population of swine in Poland, which of course is the bad signal for the whole industry about the profitability and continuation. However, I am convinced that when the situation normalizes and the future will be more predictable, a lot of farms reactivate or extend even the production size. But this is the future, and nobody today can be sure about this direction.
And for the poultry sector, they were also dealing with avian influenza. What is the situation there?
Last year it was a really most difficult year for what I remember in the industry from avian influenza. Millions of heads were killed. So today the situation is much better. The industry recovered. We come back to the previous levels of the production, and we fight now to restore the supply to the markets which we lost in the past. We also try to reopen again the UK markets and Asian customers, and this activity lasts, but it takes time to come back to these markets which were lost because of the import bans applied by some countries.
Thank you, Marcin. In a moment we'll be back to talk to you further about the challenges for you as a company.
With pleasure.
Our next guest is Elena Neroba. She holds the position of Business Development Manager at Maxigrain and is in Ukraine at the moment. Mrs. Neroba, welcome to our program, the Agricultural Knowledge Circle. Good to have you.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Good to have you. And we start with a presentation from your side.
Yeah, I've been a few slides for better understanding what we're talking about. Well, thanks again for having me today. Let's firstly talk about what happened since February 4. Could you assist me with slides? Yeah. Before the war began, Ukraine usually exports their grains and vegetable oils mostly via seaports. As we see on both charts, for bulk cargo such as grain, oilseeds, or byproducts, for the last few years, the lowest ratio of what we export via Black Sea and Azov ports was 80%. For the February 23, it was even 84% for bulk cargo, and mostly vegetable oils were exported via ports as well, 96%. What does it mean for Ukrainian buyers and for Poland and for Netherlands and as well? It means that as Europe is one of the Ukrainian corn and sun oil buyer, there will be, and there is already, a huge gap in what we can supply and our buyers need. And as we cut it from ports, part of them, I talk about Azov Sea ports, are directly occupied, as, for example, small port in Kherson. But rest of ports in Black Sea, they are just blocked because it's too dangerous to operate there. And I'm absolutely sure that any ship owner will get permission to left port for today. So let's move to the next slide. Since the beginning of the war, Ukraine started to look for another competitor, our grains, byproducts, vegetable oils, etc. The very first idea sure was Western, for Ukraine, Western European borders, as Poland firstly, Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, via railways. But there is a few problems in this process. The very first problem which we faced with was the difference between Ukrainian and European rail wages. So we can't use directly same wagons, same coaches from Ukraine to the destination. Neither European ports nor European crushers or producers or animal producers. So we need to reload grains on the border between Ukraine and the European Union to European type of wagons. It took time. The second problem is that not all the borders are ready to operate with grains because there are a lack of storage facilities where you can storage grain while you reload it, and the lack of special kind of equipment. This problem, as well as the solution to find additional wagons, it's not a long-term problems. We, both of Ukraine and the European Union, are on the way to solve it. But there is another small problem. It's mostly in legal aspects. I mean, phytosanitarian issue, all the documentations which need to be signed between countries, easy between our countries, on the way to make delivery faster. But we are very appreciated to all the efforts which European authorities handed us with, all the easiest, all the steps which already done for today and doing right now. Especially yesterday, Ukrainian and Poland culture ministers signed a new agreement to ease the phytosanitarian issue. And I'm really sorry for that, but Poland phytosanitarian inspection will work 24 hours a day. I'm really sorry for that. But the biggest problem which I see for today is the facilities of European ports. Nobody expected that such situation could happen. Nobody was ready to this war. So Poland ports, let's move to the next slide. Poland ports as well as Romanian are not ready to operate with such amount of grains. Can we change the slide? Next one, please. Thank you. So as well as Poland and Romanian ports are I'm sorry, I don't see the
Elena,
presentation.
just one short question. We have 20 slides from you. We also need to let a few other speakers talk. Please continue,
Okay,
but please with a high
okay,
over. Yes? Only a few
okay,
highlights.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the huge problem as for me that turnover of European ports is not enough to operate with both European and Ukrainian corn crop. I'm sorry, because in a few months both of us will harvest new crops. So if for today we can do it, I think in a few months we will face with a huge problem. Let's move further. Same situation with vegetable oils. To deliver it, not to find wagons, we need to increase port facilities. And let's talk about it later in discussion. Next slide, please. What about grain balances? The key problem is on two sides. Firstly, Ukraine will face with a huge stock storages because we can't export all that we have. As Mr. Biden and European Commissions both said that Ukraine has around 20 million of wheat and corn which could be exported, while people in MENA countries are suffer and faced with really hunger. We can't, so our stocks will increase. Same time, as we see on the maps, let's move a few slides further, and yeah, I will show you what I talk about. The next one, please. Next one. Yeah, as we see on this slide, where is the main crop usually planting? So part of these territories are occupied, and it will mostly affect wheat production and sunflower seeds production. So we can't export what we have. We can't produce in full capacity, and same time we will face with storage, lack of storage, because around 3 million tons of storage are on occupied territories. And it will be a very strange situation when we have grains, we have opportunity to, we have desire to export it, but we can't do it because of infrastructure, logistical problems, firstly. Let's go further. So world will faced with a shortage of grains, wheat, corn, and sun oil, which is a very important point. I will explain why. Ukraine usually supply around 6 million tons of sun oils to global market. To substitute this volume, we will need to find another kind of vegetable oil. The most easy decision is use soybean oil, because rapeseed production much more lower, and rapeseed will not be enough to substitute this volume of sun oil. But oil content of soy is much lower. You will from same volume of soy, you will not get same volume of soy oil which you have from crushing sunflower. For example, if you wish to produce 6 million tons of soy oil, you will need to crush 30 million tons of soybeans. And you will get around, depends on your equipment and depends on quality of soybeans, you will get around 80% of this volume soy meal. Instead, 9 million tons of sunflower meal, you will get almost twice more of soybean meal. But the ratio between them are not 1-to-1. So we will have extra volumes of meal on the market. This is the only one good effect from current situation, especially for meat production, for animal feeding, because part of animal feed diet will be a little bit cheaper, but all the rest will be expensive, especially if we will replace all wheat to corn. And according to what we have with weather condition in all northern hemisphere with wheat, I'm quite sure that nobody will feed wheat to animals if it has higher than 10% of protein content. Let's go further. About the latest number of USDA. USDA is United States Department of Agriculture. It's mean Agri. Last week they issue a first forecast of the next season, and it's a little bit overestimated. I already see it's all overestimated. The main point is India. When the war began, everybody started to look countries who can substitute Ukrainian wheat on the market, because all the rest, it doesn't matter for today, because as previous speaker taught, we need to feed the world, and the cheapest way to feed the world is bread. The poorest countries, the developing countries, consume twice more bread daily than, for example, people in Poland or in the Netherlands. And according to previous expectation, India was the only one country who can give extra volumes to the market. But as per very dry and hot days for the last few weeks, they probably lost around 15% of potential crop. And it's reflected in a ban of exports. It's not a full ban. They will export in a demand of government of country who are suffer, or they will allow exports for those contracts which were signed before the ban was signed. But this balance sheet, which you see on your screen, shows that we are still lower in production, even with these Indian over expected numbers, than a year ago. Same time, we have huge demand of all countries which all imports. Maybe Poland isn't this country. It's not maybe, it's for sure. But everything in this world is connected. There will not be cheap Poland and cheap bread in Poland, and cheap eggs and cheap bread in Poland, cheap vegetable oil, if somewhere it is expensive. Let's go to the next slide. We already have discussed what Ukraine supplied to Poland. As previous speaker mentioned, the cake it's not just for Poland but for all European country is sunflower oil. The second one is corn. But for the last few years, Europe became more and more self-sufficient in corn production. We see how numbers in corn import from Ukraine and from Brazil as well decrease year by year. But I think this year we will be a little bit higher than previous one, because before, which could be used to produce bread, flour, or export somewhere, will be export wheat, not for feed consumption. Maybe let's discuss another questions with all our today participants, because I can talk really forever.
We've heard that, Ms. Elena, and we are very glad with all the information that you shared with us so far. If we look at the situation, question from our side: storage is a huge problem. Logistics is a huge problem. If you look at the coming season, how do you look at what are your expectations towards that?
Current season, you mean crop 21-22?
Yeah, exactly.
Which will end in a few months? Nothing will change. It will be the same. We are now able to export around 1 million tons per month, including all channels, including Danube River. In road is railways, as I mentioned already, and the very few trucks. And unfortunately, while ports are blocked, nothing will change. Price will become same expensive, and even higher, because all countries which are usually imports food now started to increase just, and same time those who are usually exports try and manipulate market or to decrease prices on domestic market, as we see with India, for example, or Kazakhstan or whoever. So I'm trying to manage by government exports, and I think it will be a real mess in a few months when countries which are one of the biggest wheat buyers, and same time one of the poorest countries in the world, they will harvesting and they will really faced with a huge shortage. Because, for example, Syria was 30% less wheat. Pakistan will get 15% less wheat than it was expected. Morocco, huge losses. All the
I add
countries.
there another question, Elena, because the European Union, they announced last Friday to work on solidarity lanes between Ukraine and the EU countries. And yesterday also there was a meeting between the Ukrainian minister and the Polish minister also about opening of more border points in order to facilitate the grain trade. Do you see that these types of measures will contribute to something positive to be able to export?
For sure, it will be positive, but not in those volumes which markets need. For the rest of season, for 3 months, plus minus, we need to export 20 million tons. It means around 7 million tons per month. Before the war, in the best months, we hadn't have such numbers. So using just railways, it's absolutely impossible, even with all the steps which especially Poland does to Ukraine. I'm sorry I have to say it, but yeah, it will be better. It will be, maybe it will add 500,000 tons per month. But firstly, we can't do it immediately. To open new border, it's not just to came to the door and open it. You need to sign
Indeed,
a lot
on
of
storage
documents.
facilities, etc. So it will take a very long time even to replace it.
For sure, even to find money, even to negotiate with bank. My colleague from BNP Paribas can assure you how many months will take to take a loan, to sign a loan, a credit line in bank, and to launch.
Would it be maybe important also to prioritize the exports from Ukraine? That you would, for example, go more for valuable products such as oils first before grain?
Could you explain me how you will prioritize trains? Because for today, at all
I heard one of the agricultural organizations actually talk about that maybe because there is 5,000 train wagons and 20-kilometer traffic on the roads to prioritize in the export.
Already 7,000 wagons are waiting in the Ukrainian Western European border lines. And you can't just came each 1 of 10 wagons and okay, you can go here and you can go here. It's not a line of people, it's line of wagons. You can't go and take this one and reload it somewhere in the first line, in the first place.
Mr. Neroba, a question, because there's a huge problem with the transport and and the logistics. There are some proposals being done, as we discussed here at the table together with you. What in your opinion, can be done more to speed things up?
The only one decision which is the faster and do not need any investment, any money, it's to provide a United Nations convoy to vessels from Ukrainian ports. It will be the cheapest and the fastest way.
It is something indeed being proposed, I would say, in diplomatic scenes. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can solve.
United Nations already did it a few years ago for Somali. They have some such experience how to provide convoy, because without convoy, what Europe need in vegetable oils, what Europe will need in corn, especially if dry and frosty weather will stay in Latin America. They will got less corn as expected, and European poultry producers will face with shortage. And you will still need those corn which are locked in Ukraine, which are we ready and really wish to sell, because our farmers as well need money. They need money to a new planting campaign. They can't keep. We are not China. We can't keep grains for 10 years.
Okay,
So it's like
Ms. Neroba,
win-win
thank you very much
situation.
for this interview for this moment. Please stay with us in the studio for the panel discussion that we have later on with you at the end of this program. And before we start that discussion, we'll go to the final part of the interview with Marcin Galiński, Managing Director at Trouw Nutrition Poland.
We're back with you, Marcin. Thank you once again. I would like to ask you, what is the biggest challenge you are facing due to the war on Ukraine?
Yeah, for us, the definitely availability of the raw materials. The whole supply chain, because of COVID previously, were affected significantly, and now the Ukrainian war applies some sanctions to supply from Russia. We are also affected by supply of cereals from Ukraine, and availability of them are reduced in Poland significantly in the last months before the war, but now in the last weeks again. However, in the last days we heard that some export from Ukraine to Europe is restarted. It goes slowly, but makes some opportunity in the future, probably when we reorganize everything and put in place the right structure to keep the regular supplies. Another difficulties is prediction of prices of our products. Because of this supply disturbances, the raw materials prices are jumping up very quickly. Sometimes it is very big surprise for us and our customers. And availability of vitamins or amino acids in the last year at the end were also the issue on the market.
And have you been sourcing from other countries than Ukraine recently to diversify where your inputs are coming from?
Yeah, as a Trouw we have regular supplies from different countries in Europe, but also worldwide. That's why it's one of the strong points, being a big family, international family. Our colleagues from other countries also can help us in difficult times. It happens with phosphate in the last weeks, and this international network help us to keep the continuous production without any disturbance for our customers, for our factory in the last days.
Because indeed about phosphate, that is one of the biggest challenges you're facing as a company, because previously it was coming for 40% from Russia?
Yeah, even more. Together with trading activity, it was above 50%. Nowadays we have organized different sources, the Serbian phosphate or Turkish, but also from China. Our group is organized, and we are really helping each other. Every OPCO is involved in the regular calls to keep the supply regular and stable for us, but also for our customers.
So we have a lot of uncertainty, a lot of raw materials that need to be sourced in different locations as well. But maybe there's also something positive to mention. Could you see one positive trend maybe for you as a company or in Poland in the agri-food sector?
I think that definitely in the last months or years even, the milk industry, the cow business was growing, and stable growth was observed, maybe not 2 digits growth, but a regular growth per year, and we see that they continue for the future. And I believe it's one of the solid now segment in Poland, where we developed significantly, and still we have more appetite to grow.
Thank you, Martin. It's also very nice to hear something positive in these very uncertain times. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and welcome next time.
So we have a very warm welcome to come again to Trouw Nutrition. That's good to hear. As the last part of this program, we have a panel discussion with all the participants. We will use this opportunity to look at the different scenarios and the possible solutions for current problems that we are facing. Also, there's a possibility to ask your questions. We have some, so we will discuss that here in the group. Please share your other questions and comments that you have, and we will implement them in the program. Let me swiftly introduce the panelists to you. Krzystof Dębek, Trade and Development Director of Trouw Nutrition Poland. He is with us online. Krzystof, welcome in the program. Ms. Elena Neroba is back with us, Business Development Manager at Maxigrain. She's joining us online from Ukraine. Grzegorz Kozieja, Director of the Food and Agri Sector Analysis Bureau at the International Food and Agri Hub at the BNP Paribas Bank Polska. Grzegorz, welcome again. And Dariusz Goszczyński, Director General of the National Poultry Council of Poland. Welcome back as well. And Carolien, Spaans, as the old broadcasting with me, Agricultural Counsellor at the Netherlands Embassy in Warsaw. A question that came from the audience is, what new patterns can we see in the overall value chain that can be developed in this disrupted situation? And a second question from the same person, how can a farmer prepare and reduce risks? Or maybe it's actually one question. I would quickly like to go over a few of the participants. Dariusz, could you give a first impression or first answer to this?
Maybe I try to provide answer for the second part of the question.
Yep.
It's difficult when we have such unstable situation. It's difficult to provide simple answer what to do. For sure, calculate in detail cost of production, and I would like to encourage, especially poultry breeders, for close collaboration with slaughterhouses to work in a long-term contracts.
Okay.
This will help them for sure. We can observe on the market that very often they don't think about that collaboration, then think about contract at the later stage of production, and very often it's too late, to compensate all costs.
Right, and diversifying your supplies, is that an option, or is there not a quick win for that?
Of course, this is an option, but it's if some producers have all facilities dedicated for chicken production, for example, it's difficult, to diversify production quickly.
Yeah, understood. Grzegorz, quick reaction maybe?
Yeah, well, I think concerning this value chains, I think there will be more and more exploration in localization of local products. I think even in these times of rising prices for consumers, there may happen that instead of exploring world cuisine, they will be more looking into what you can, in our situation, do more with potato, tomato and onion, for example. And I couldn't agree, I think, more with Darek concerning what he started with. So this cooperation and in general a behavior that gives you a stabilization and what you have under your control. I think in this situation we are in, we can forget that the stability will basically happen. Yeah, you need to apply tools that could help with achieving it.
Right. I would also like to go to our guest online, Krzystof Dębek. Krzystof, we haven't talked to you before. Welcome in the program. If we ask you to farm prepare better and reduce risk in the current situation, what would you say?
As Marcin said in the beginning, Poland, for example, was really very dependent from Russian phosphate MCP till the war started the end of February, almost 80% of the phosphate was delivered from the Russian suppliers. And during the month, or almost 2 months already, we did a very big step forward and just trying to find new suppliers. New challenges also helped us a lot, and we found a new solution. And from one side, this is a risk, but from the other side, this is a really very, very big challenge also for us as a premix producer and the company who works together with the customer. And what I can say that at the moment, there is a change in the feed production in Poland because more feed is coming from the feed industry, but before came from the farm home mixers. So the risk is only we look at it as just our chance.
And you think maybe that the home mixers will become more popular again in the coming periods?
I hope yes, but probably not in the short term. Let's think that during maybe the next 2 years will be more popular again, but for the short term, rather not, because of the availability, as we said, the grains, the oils, the minerals, and so on.
Okay, thank you for those remarks. For the audience at home, I would like to remember that you still have some time to send in your questions. Please do. And maybe now over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, we have a very difficult question as well. What would be the impact when the war in Ukraine would end? Would we still see some spillover effect for the long term, do you think? Maybe start, by the way, with Elena, who is in Ukraine.
Thank you. It's very sensitive questions. What will happen, nobody knows, but for sure, at the very short moment, all prices, especially derivatives, will fall, really sharply fall. But this means nothing because even if war stop today or tomorrow, we will not have more grain for the next crop because time already lost. We already have damages in fields. We already skip time for fertilizers input. Yeah, I mean feed winter crops. We already almost skip a window for sun seeds and corn planting. Not for sure, because we still have 2 weeks ahead, but we are much lower. You can check it in my slides. Much lower year over year in planting pace. And some facilities are damaged, some storage facilities are damaged. We need to check all the floating bombs in Black Sea, which almost each week one or another country find. Yeah, 2 days ago, another one was on the sea coast in Odessa. So we need to demine Ukrainian fields. So yeah, for sure. For the few weeks after the war will end, derivative market will fall. But then another question will be on the table, and I think we will have a very hard situation because food security and food inflation began not just because of the war. It began much earlier after printing COVID money in all the world. So while all this money are not consumed by the market, while all of them are on the market and operate with kind of manipulations, we will have high prices.
We will indeed, the prices will remain high, is the estimation also of BNP, at least from what I understood. But Krzysztof, could you maybe tell for you as a company, what kind of long-term effects would you see for Trouw Nutrition?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Trouw Poland, I think, is one of the 3 the biggest premix producer in Poland. And as I said, long-term effect. For sure, we are trying to supply all of the Polish feed producers, and we are also changing the products used in it. Because as I mentioned before, in the selected raw materials, we are just looking for the new suppliers and for, let's say, the new raw materials. And just to be present on the market and just to offer the competitive solution, we must, from the other hand, just to look also for our profitability. So, as I said, for the longer time, just to keep selling to the feed producers and not forget about the farmers and the home mixers. And from time to time, we are also selling products to our sister companies, for example, to Ukraine, because for the time being, they have had a lot of problems with the availability of vitamins, for example. So,
But I understood from Martin that you're, as a company, trying to diversify also among yourselves, so to help each other out.
Yeah. That is also, we are just helping our colleagues in the East. And from time to time, we have exactly the same cooperative from our Western countries. As for example, last year, where it was a very big challenge with the amino acids availability in the whole Europe.
Dariusz, what would you see as a long-term effect for the poultry sector?
As we all really look forward stability on the market, but in a recent report of World Bank, we could read that we could expect within the next 2-3 years a lot of disturbances. So I do hope, we wish I think we all wish to stop this war today. And start to collaborate as we did, but we could hear that this will take time. It's not easy. So in long term, within the next 1 to 3 years, we could expect disturbances, unstable market. We have to find ourselves somehow in this situation.
And Grzegorz, for you, maybe also about the dynamics of the prices of raw materials, as also Trouw Nutrition Martin was saying, that the prices are getting a little bit more stable now. Although last Friday also India put an export ban on wheat, so maybe it caused a disruption again.
Yeah, we as one of the consequences, and we've been seeing it now already, is the expansion of this trade protection or trade limitation measures, and it will be coming up. I wouldn't maybe say randomly, but on a political agenda more, as the famous quote goes: "You are under any social contract you are like 3 meals from revolution wherever you are." So whatever to keep the supply for yourself is good, and each such limitation in a world that is used to the free trade and big free flows of goods is yet another obstacle to come back to stabilization. You remember that Arab Spring was one of its reasons was increasing food prices, and now in general in Africa we have 30% more people, yeah, and even more difficult situation. So they still have their supplies. They are trying to organize more, but we may have even stronger unrest when there actually won't be a physical grain, whatever you want to pay. And in order to stabilize the situation, I think Darek was mentioning that the war should stop quickly, but I think unfortunately for everybody, it must end well for Ukraine. Yeah? In order to have the stabilization again, because as Elena was describing all the logistical circumstances, it's all logistics must be safe basically. So it must end well for Ukraine.
Definitely, it must end well for Ukraine on all levels. I agree with you. One question about this protection, I would say, about these export bans. Poland is an exporting country itself. Would you also expect Poland to put in such a measure, or it would, in my opinion, not benefit the country, but maybe you heard something else?
Yeah, well, I touched a bit the political agenda, and we are a year or maybe a year and a half from elections, so there may be various ideas circulating. I wouldn't say they would be necessarily going live, but I think there may appear in the public discussion what to do, how to do it, in order not to harm ourselves. Anyway, 80% of Polish exports are going to within the EU. So within the EU, it's let's say more difficult to input limitations. Yeah, but I think that there will be a discussion.
And that is, what would be your opinion on that?
On export ban, poultry sector over 50% is exported, so self-sufficient, and I don't see any signals to impose ban on poultry meat. But we could observe, when we talk about grains, Hungary position, also Bulgarian position. They wanted to impose kind of a ban on that export, but European Commission presented quite strong position on that.
That's correct. It's indeed still against the European legislation to impose any bans. For now, Hungary indeed has the check on exports before you can do it. So far, no exports have been stopped. Luckily, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Today, I would like to thank the participants for joining in, which are Marcin Galiński, Managing Director of Trouw Nutrition Poland, Elena Neroba, Business Development Manager at Maxigrain, and she's in Ukraine, Grzegorz Kozieja, Director of the Food and Agri Sector Bureau from BNP Paribas Polska, Dariusz Goszczyński, Director General of the National Poultry Council of Poland, and I would also like to thank Carolien Spaans, Agricultural Counsellor at the Embassy of the Netherlands and co-host of this program, the team of the Embassy, the team of the Netherlands Polish Chamber of Commerce, and the team of 24/7 Communications. It has been the first Agro Knowledge Circle of this year. On the websites of BNP Paribas and on the website Agroberichten Buitenland, you can find more information and reports on the war on Ukraine or on previous Agri Knowledge Circles. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube page of the Netherlands Polish Chamber of Commerce. This will keep you updated on all our events. My name is Elena van den Burg. Thank you for watching and have a nice afternoon.